I'm going to tackle Genshin Impact a bit differently from how I normally do when it comes to individual games. Usually I tend to hone in on the negative, as it's just my nature, but for once I found myself wanting to talk about what I find to be great about this game. The reason being that a lot of people tend to ignore this game due to its negative aspects, and they don't usually give it a chance to prove itself as a solid game. But since I've never discussed this game before, let me give a quick introduction. Genshin Impact is a free-to-play, open-world action RPG for the PC, PS4, and cellular devices. There's a good chance you've actually seen this game, because it has been heavily compared to Breath of the Wild with the nickname Breath of the Waifus. By simply glancing at the game's mechanics, it's easy to see where the comparison came from, since even the developers have said they were heavily inspired by Breath of the Wild's exploration and overworld mechanics. But Genshin has more going for it than the title of clone. Since I have to mention it, the reason this game has been nicknamed Breath of the Waifus is because of the numerous anime-like waifus and husbandos sprinkled liberally throughout the game. Why? Genshin Impact is a gacha, and what better to trap people with than mostly sexually appealing anime characters? Now, I don't want to spend this video ranting about how terrible the gambling aspect of the game is. We all know it sucks, we all know it's predatory, and I know it's a huge part of why people refuse to even give this game more than a cursory glance. But I want to spend this video talking about the actual game, because Genshin Impact has so many great things below the negative surface of the gacha mechanic. While I don't like to compare Genshin to Breath of the Wild, it's inevitable, so why don't I talk about the main gameplay mechanic that functions the most independently from Breath of the Wild. Genshin Impact's combat works around rapid character swapping and elemental reactions. Players are given access to 4 characters at a time that they can swap between at any time during a fight. While Link in Breath of the Wild is able to choose a handful of different weapon types to wield, each character in Genshin is tied to one of 5 weapon types and one of the 7 elements: Anemo, Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, Geo, Electro, or Dendro. By combining elements together, both players and enemies can activate elemental reactions. If you've seen my video on Spellbreak, it works similar to that game, but instead of the attacks being directly affected, it instead localizes entirely on the enemy's body. While this game doesn't have the nutty physics simulation that Breath of the Wild does, I personally find the day-to-day combat to be more fun. Sure, you don't have the insane tactics from the easily abusable physics, but in terms of standard combat, I've actually enjoyed the character switching elemental usage of Genshin more because I found it more dynamic than having one character swing a sword. Since this game is so focused on its characters, how are they? Considering I'm not a huge anime fan, I find them all to be pretty meh. You can definitely tell their personalities are tailored to appeal to people who are fans of anime archetypes, of which I am not. It's probably important for me to note that I didn't come into this game for the waifus. I came in for the exploration and combat. I could care less about this tsundere lad, but the game is doing well in fleshing out some of their traits with story quests. These quests tend to focus on one character and their storyline, and they do well to actually give players more of an insight on their personality than just the one-liners they constantly spout.
Go, Barbara, go! Go, Barbara, go!
The part of the characterization I do appreciate is in their animations. As an animation aficionado, the fact that many characters have unique animations that align with their personality is a very welcome detail. Also, the animation in some of these cutscenes is top tier. MiHoYo actually has some really talented animators in their ranks. But in an open world game, the world you're forced to explore has to be fun and well designed. So how is exploring the world of Teyvat? A world consisting of 7 distinct nations, the game currently only features 2, but those 2 regions are made very distinct from each other and are pretty large on their own. Mondstadt is the starting region that's inspired by Germany and is the smaller of the 2. This region definitely gives off more of a standard Fantasyland vibe, as the European-inspired architecture is commonly used in medieval fantasy settings such as this. However, when you reach Liyue, that's when the game really kicks it up a notch. Each region acts like a chapter of the game's story, and Liyue is actually chapter 1. See, despite the fact that the players spend a rather large amount of time in Mondstadt, that area is actually considered the game's prologue. This makes sense when you compare the size of Mondstadt to Liyue. This is where the game's world really starts to shine. Genshin's developer is actually Chinese, So it's just as well that one of their debut regions was based off of China. I can't tell you how refreshing it was to explore a land that adopts seldom used geographical structures. The tall structures of the stone forest, the adaptation of a small Chinese village, the colorful and populated harbor, it's all done wonderfully. Additionally, both Mondstadt and Liyue are geographically distinct from each other, not just in the materials used, but in the layouts. Mondstadt is a much flatter region, with long cliff sides, while Liyue is much more vertical with mountains for players to climb and, in the end, more fulfilling gameplay. Both regions are very well crafted from their inspired cultures and geography, and they're both very distinct as well. However, what makes part of them distinct is the game's soundtrack. I finally made it to this part. Look, even if you don't want to give this game a shot, do yourself a favor and at least check out the music, because it is one of the best overall soundtracks I've ever heard. It slaps hard. MiHoYo went above and beyond by hiring Yu Peng Shen, a well-rounded professional film score composer, to create Genshin's music, and however much money it took, it was 100% worth it. There is not a single track or variation that I find to be mediocre or grating. Every track is pleasing to listen to, and considering how each region has multiple tracks assigned to different areas, it never gets annoying. Each region has a distinct style of music to go with the region's inspiration. Once again, Mondstadt's music goes for a more standard fantasy sound with occasional oohing vocals, but Liyue steers hard into the Chinese influence. Yu Peng Chen is known for his expertise in traditional Chinese compositions, and here, they're at full force. The music in Liyue is exceptionally good, but that doesn't mean Mondstadt's isn't. Both regions' music is fantastically composed, pleasing to listen to, and you've been hearing it this entire time. Please, check it out even if you don't have any interest in the game. Listen, even though I love this game and I've poured God knows how many hours into it, I'm not blind to its numerous issues and greedy practices. There are so many other things I can rant about, but it's stuff that other players have beaten to death. There isn't much more to say on the issue of resin, the gacha system, obvious balance of characters between the base ones and the ones rewarded through pulls. It's bad, they suck, the end. I have nothing new to add to the arguments. What I wanted to achieve with this video is to show people that there is a game, a rather extensive, beautifully crafted game beneath the terrible gacha aspect. There's nothing you have to buy in the gacha model. The game is fully playable and explorable as a free-to-play, as the game gives you all the necessary characters to fully explore the world. There are chances to earn the currency used to make wishes for weapons and characters throughout the game's story and events, so it's not like anything is out of reach, it's just made slower and harder. But that's just the price to play for it being a free-to-play. I personally have treated the game akin to a subscription, spending around $15 a month for the 2 passes that the game offers. In my eyes, this is no different than an MMO subscription to something like World of Warcraft, except Genshin is very much crafted around a single-player experience with the option to co-op certain parts of the game. There is no PvP, and that's a good thing considering the game's gacha model. It's best not to end up in the same controversy boat as Battlefront 2. Just stay on your own controversy barge. It's very hard for me to recommend this game, because a lot of people, for good reason, can't look past the fact it's a Chinese company and a gacha game. But I say, if you have the self-control not to type in your credit card number, Genshin Impact is a great single-player free-to-play game, especially if you're needing something to fill in that Breath of the Wild hole. Just play it responsibly. Thanks to 404 Velox, Julian Arnott, Ahsoka, Trinima, That Monica, and Sean O. Manny. Special thanks to Damp Volcano for being a Patreon investor.